What a joy to be here. And thank you, Alyssa and Justin, for inviting me. I've heard about this for a long time, and it's really wonderful to be part of it. AJ sends his love, by the way. So I find that more and more when I'm asked to share, I want to share kind of what I'm living, like what he's working with me on. And for me, for the past time, it's been a couple of different things. I thought at first, gosh, I had sort of have two teachings. But what I've realized is that it's all sort of part of the same thing. And one is being loved, and the other is entering into rest. And I bet every one of us, however old we are, has heard a lot about how much God loves us. Am I right? Have you guys heard about how much God loves you? Yes. So everybody has heard a lot about that. And so I was kind of wondering, God, what do I say that people haven't heard before? And last night, after things were over, I actually walked down. You can get down onto some rocks by the lake, down here. And I was sitting there, and I was just saying, God, what do you want me to say about love? And so I was just sitting there, looking at the beautiful light and the way the trees were silhouetted and listening to the lapping of the waves. And then a bird started flying. I guess it was flying that way. I can't exactly remember. But it ended up landing on that little point of land, that nearest point of land at the end of the point, and I realized it was a heron. Do you have great blue herons in this part of the country? Because we have them in Maine, and they're one, I can't say they're my favorite bird, but they're definitely one of my favorite birds. And so I thought, a heron. And he was just standing, silhouetted over there. Like, God, you gave me a heron. And then I sat there for a little longer, and I noticed something sticking up out of the water, very close, close to me. I was like, I'm surprised I didn't notice that stick before. That's something I've been looking for a while. And all of a sudden, it disappeared under the water. And I burst out laughing, because I'd been thinking, I hadn't noticed that stick before, and it wasn't a stick. I thought, that must have been a fish. I've never seen a fish sticking its head out of the water. But I did. I burst out laughing. And then I burst into tears, because I realized this was what God wanted me to talk about being loved. Oh, but there's a little addendum to the story. I went down there again this morning, and I'm sitting there watching. It was a turtle. The turtle's head came out, and it was like God saying, I just want you to get the story right. That was not a fish sticking its head out. Oh, that was a turtle. But he did those things just for me, because he knew how much it would tickle me, how thankful I'd be, and how touched I would be. And I actually read a great definition of love the other day. Somebody defined love as a non-possessive delight in the particularity of another. A non-possessive delight in the particularity of another. Think about somebody you really love. It could be a spouse, it could be a child, it could be a friend. Everybody got somebody in mind? Close your eyes if it makes it easier. So, think about some of the details that you love about them. I'm thinking about AJ. I'm thinking about the way I feel when he hugs me. And about how much I love his curly hair. And about the look in his eyes when he looks at his son. That's the particularity of AJ. Those are the little details about AJ. A non-possessive delight in the particularity of another. And that's how we are loved by our Father and by our Lord, who's also scripturally our husband. Jesus. That's how we're loved by Jesus. They delight in the particularity of me, of you. The little teeny details of the way we're put together, the color of our hair. I heard somebody talking about a vision that he had had, and I know there are differences of belief about whether or not Jesus was alive somehow and helped God create the world or not. But maybe we can put those aside just because I think that's beside the real point of the story. So this guy was saying that he had had a vision of Jesus and God before, like before creation, before the world began, and they were making people. Like they had put together a person, the color of their hair, the color of their eyes, their sense of humor, their gifts, etc., etc. And with everyone, Jesus would say, "This is the best one so far." And God would laugh and say, "That's what you've said about everyone." But that's the reality. When God looks at you, he sees Jesus. But he also sees your particularity, and it delights him. When Jesus looks at you, he sees the bride that he died for. Now I know we're all part of the bride, right? But again, if you can put that aside, he looks at you and he delights in you, in the particularity of you, because he sees who you're meant to be. God sees Jesus. Jesus sees his perfect bride. How deep have you let that into your heart? He's constantly inviting me, kind of coaxing me to open up my heart at deeper and deeper levels to that reality, that I am loved. I am adored. They like me. They like me. They like hanging out with me. They know I'm going to make mistakes. They know I'm going to be, well, the word that comes to mind is not the best to say in mixed company, but they know I'm going to be a jerk sometimes. They love me. They just delight in me. They delight in me. You know, a number of years ago now, when I was still living in Ireland, I met a woman, AJ called her the crazy lady. She was Scottish actually, but she lived in this little pink cottage by a broken down castle on the Shannon estuary. And she was a Christian who was really sort of ahead of the game in seeing the relationship between spiritual things, the kingdom, and quantum physics, and the kind of the new realities that are beginning to be discovered. But she said to me it was probably May or June one year, and she said, you should spend half an hour a day sitting and saying, I am loved. I am loved. Love loves me. Love loves me. I am loved. Well, I did it. I actually was like, I wasn't quite ready for love loves me. But I would say, Jesus loves me. God loves me. I am loved. I am loved. Jesus loves me. And you know, at first, I felt really stupid. Like, this is so dumb. I'm sitting here, like, just repeating to myself. Like, I just felt like self-conscious. But you know what? He got through to me. And after a while, it got real. In a way that it had never been real before. Now I can say that and I feel the change in my body. Like I feel it. Well, not so much anymore because I'm actually beginning to carry it with me. But I still have so far to go. But I've come so far. And you know, when I read that, the context in which I read that definition of love was actually in a piece about loving ourselves. That I need to be able to delight in the particularity of me. I have to be able to delight in myself. Even like when I blow it, that I laugh at myself instead of beating myself up. That I delight the way I would if my kid screwed up or my grandchild. That it doesn't matter. So he's actually working with me. You know, some of you know that I lost my husband. It'll be 4 years ago in August, very suddenly. And I had actually had surgery about 6 weeks before he died. Well, yeah. Major surgery. And he had been taking care of me as I recuperated, doing everything. And he was wonderful. You know, all the cooking, all the shopping, all the cleaning, taking care of hospital bills, I came home from the hospital with an open wound, so changing my dressing for me. And suddenly he dropped dead. And a couple of nights after he died, I remember lying in my bed and just thinking, all the stuff that John was doing, now I'm going to have to start doing it. And in my spirit I heard, I am all that John was and more. I'm all that John was and more. And that was an invitation and a challenge. Am I going to look at what I don't have? Or am I going to turn to him? Am I going to let him be all that John was and more? And I can remember nights, because I was living, I had some housemates, but I spent a lot of time on my own, cooking supper for one and eating it, but like bursting out laughing because he was there. I remember one time my car wouldn't start, and I had to be somewhere, and I was kind of freaking out, and I just said, honey, you're going to have to take care of this for me. And he did. He's so willing. But will I let him? Will I let him love me? Will I let my father love me? Will I let my husband / brother / Lord, will I let them love me? They delight in the particularity of you. One more story and then I'm going to move on. But I heard a guy talk who has written about love, and he said that a foundation, a Christian foundation, gave a bunch of money to a bunch of academics so they could start an academic program to study godly love. And the guy said, I can't think of a better way to kill godly love than to create an academic program to study. But he somehow got on their list of top 100 people to interview about the topic of the love of God. So he agreed to the interview, and they came, and he said, I'm happy to answer your questions, but before, I'd just like to know, what is this program really about? And they said, well, it's about the Great Command. Like the Great Commandment. And he said, and what's the Great Commandment? And they kind of looked at him like, you don't know? And they said, well, it's, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And he said, oh, so this is an Old Testament study. He said, in the Gospel of John, Jesus gives a new commandment. He says, a new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you. That's the new commandment. The old commandment is about me needing to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength, and my neighbor. It starts with me. Thou shalt, thou shalt. The new commandment starts with him. I gotta love you and myself. I can't love you any more than I love myself. But I gotta love myself the way he loves me. And that I've gotta love myself and you the way he loves me. So, the first command is to be loved. Is to let the essence of it is it starts with me opening up to his love. Okay, now I'm going to get you guys to do something. I'd like you to find somebody, I'd like you to pair off with somebody you didn't come with. And for those of you who are comfortable standing, I'd like you to just find a partner and then find a place to stand. Those of you who are more comfortable sitting, that's fine. Just find a partner who can sit with you. All right? Go. Go. All right, everybody got somebody? Everybody got somebody? All right, I want you to do something called the mirror exercise. Has anybody ever done that? The mirror exercise? It's something that I learned more years ago than I'd care to talk about in acting class. So what you do is you face your partner, like look face to face, and then you decide one of you is going to lead and one of you is going to follow. Okay? And what you want to do is to move in perfect sync, like as if you're in a mirror. Like one of you is the mirror image of the other. So whoever is the follower is the mirror image of the leader. So you want to move as close to in sync as you possibly can. Okay? So decide who's going to be the leader and who's going to be the follower. Okay? You ready? Okay, go.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, some of you are having trouble with mirror image. I see somebody's raising their right leg and the other person is raising their right leg also. No. If they're raising their right leg, you raise your left leg. Anyway, how do you guys feel like you did with that?
I had a good leader.
Did anybody find it challenging? What made it challenging? Sorry? You didn't know what she was going to do? Comfort zone, what do you mean?
Not comfortable for me doing that. Not seeing myself.
So you kind of felt, could you say you felt self-conscious? Uncomfortable, self-conscious? Anything else? Any other thoughts?
It's just really silly.
Hmm?
We kept laughing the whole time.
Why?
Because it was fun. It was goofy.
It was goofy.
It felt awkward.
It was awkward. You do have to pay attention. Yes, lots of people laugh when they're doing it. Lots of people laugh because they feel self-conscious. They feel awkward. They feel uncomfortable. And so laughing is one reaction that you can have to that. So I'll tell you a couple of secrets about the mirror exercise. To be really good at it, the leader has to move really, really slow. The leader has to figure out what pace the follower can follow at.
You did good at that.
So the leader has to really, really be aware of the follower. The follower has to the follower has to pay really close attention, and often it's peripheral vision that you have to use. But both of them have to forget about themselves and be totally focused on the other person. And the reason why you have to use your peripheral vision is that you have to be looking into each other's eyes. You look into each other's eyes, and then the leader goes at whatever pace the follower can handle, and the follower just pays minute attention. And you actually get to the place where you can really look like a mirror. So try it again using those pro tips, okay? Same leader, same follower. Same leader, same follower. And then we can change.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Do you feel like you did better this time? Okay.
Pretty good.
I'm gonna give you one more hint, and then you're gonna change roles, okay? And this came from I took yoga lessons for years from a woman who was also a massage therapist, which was wonderful. But she used to have us do a pose, and then she would say, "That's great. Now do half as much." So we would do it again, and she would say, "You look great. Now do half as much." So that's my second pro tip. So switch roles and do half as much as what you were doing before in terms of moving. And the other thing is, remember, you're going to do best if you look into each other's eyes and use your peripheral vision about the movement. And sometimes I do an exercise with people that's just stay still and look into each other's eyes, because most people find that really hard to do because you feel so self-conscious. But, okay, one more time, switch roles and do half as much of half as much. Ashley, what? It just means go slow, slow, slow. Slow, small. Go slow and small. Wow. How did that one go? You get better, don't you? You get better as you go. Okay, everybody can sit down. You get better.
Can I open my eyes now?
But it really is, it's about things going really slow, really, really slow. And you can just get more and more attuned to somebody else. And we can do that. We can do that with God. We can do that with Jesus. We can do that with the Spirit. Whoever you want, whatever terminology you want to use. But in order to do it, you have to get your focus off yourself. Like to be good at the mirror exercise, you have to forget about yourself, whether you're the leader or the follower. You've got to forget about yourself and get totally focused on the other person. That's when you can be the most effective and successful. And it's the same with, we've sung about, we've heard about, we live only for you and you're all that matters. And it's all our heart's desire. We want that to be true of ourselves. I want that to be true of me. But I get distracted a lot. And a lot of the time I'm thinking about myself instead of thinking about him. And I tell you what, really getting the sweetness of his love for me makes it way easier to think about him. My husband used to say, who's in the center of your TV screen? Like, who's in the center of the picture? I want him to be in the center of my TV screen. And for me, that's really what entering into his rest is about. Entering into rest. The woman I told you about who lived in the pink cottage by the broken down castle. I can't remember the scientific term, but she used to talk about that there's some point scientifically where there's absolute stillness. And that there's some amazing scientific thing that happens when you can get to that point. I should really do a little research and remember more about what the heck she was talking about. But I remember it struck me because the idea of absolute stillness. But that inspired me at another point when I was living in Ireland to spend half an hour a day meditating on the verse, be still and know that I am God. The Hebrew words that are translated be still in that verse are only translated be still. The Hebrew word, it's actually only one word, and it's only translated be still in that verse. In other places it's translated let go, take your hand off, cease from striving. Some modern verses say relax, versions say relax. So the verse is relax, let go, stop striving, and know by experience that I am God. We rarely quote the second half of that verse, which is, I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in all the earth. Like what you get to know when you're still is that he's got everything. He's got everything in hand. God's got it. He's God. He's in charge. One day I was sort of saying, be still and know that I am God. Be present and know that I am God. And he said, now is the only place I am. Now is the only place I am. So if I'm thinking about the future or the past, that's not where he is. Like if I want to connect with him, it's all in the moment. It's all coming to stillness and just be. You know, I saw this quote, and I think of it pretty often. It says, be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know. Be still. Be. I just want to get to the place where I can be. I can just be. So I've been practicing different ways of getting to the place where I just am. And there are books written about it. Like there's lots of practices that you can practice. One is what we have every opportunity of doing here. Just look. Just notice the detail. Notice the color green. I was sitting down on those rocks this morning, and I'm from Maine. I had to scrape frost off my windshield yesterday morning on the way to the airport. And when I left the airport in Atlanta and started driving here, I was like, there's something wrong. Then I went, oh, there are leaves on the trees. Maine will look like this in maybe 6 weeks or so. But there are some trees on the other side, the color green. I started to cry. That amazing color before it's full summer. And they're still sort of tender. Like these. That green is amazing. So to just get lost in that, I actually have this little book. It's called lost in wonder. Lost in wonder. We can get lost in wonder at a flower, a rock. I got lost in wonder at one time at my ball jar full of water, like my mason jar full of water. Just so beautiful, the way water holds the light. So that's a way that you're not in the center of your TV screen anymore. Sometimes I just, like, there's a lot about breathing in terms of practicing ways to get quiet, meditate, whatever you want to call it. One is just following your breath. Just breathe in and out. And think about your breath. Just feel your breath coming into your body and going out. Try that for a minute. Just sit and breathe. Was that hard for anybody? Sometimes stuff like that is hard for me in a group because I feel self-conscious. A lot of times I have to shut my eyes during worship because I get distracted by the other people and I really want to be focused on Him. But sometimes I breathe in and I just imagine that I'm breathing in His love. And when I breathe out, the love is getting into every cell of my body. So I breathe in love. And then I breathe it into every cell. Just picture it going into every cell. Or I do that with peace. Or with rest. So pick one. Pick one of those, whatever you feel led to do. And just spend a couple of minutes breathing in and breathing out. Anybody feel a change in your body? It's pretty amazing, isn't it? I really want to get to the place where I can spend hours doing that. It's still hard for me because I still feel like I should be doing something. Like I should be doing, like I should be being productive. Like I shouldn't be wasting time. There's a book by a guy named Watchman Nee, and it's called The Normal Christian Life, and I think it might be the last chapter in the book, where he tells the story of a woman. I think he came to know the Lord when he was at university in England, and there was a woman who lived in a little village somewhere in England who just had an amazing relationship with the Lord, and he and his friends would go over and she would impart really whatever. I kind of hate to say impart wisdom because it's so much more than that. Like she was imparting the heart of God to them, and they would leave and say, she's wasting her life. Like, why doesn't she have a congregation? She's just living in this little village, wasting her life. And he went to the story in the Gospels about Jesus being at supper and the woman coming with the vial of, costly ointment that smelled so good and breaking it on him to pour it out on him, and how the disciples said, she's wasting that ointment that could have been sold. And Watchman Nee said, that he realized that this woman was wasting her life on Jesus. And what more precious thing to do than to spend hours allowing him to delight in you and being open to that delight, like letting it in. He died, like Justin so beautifully talked about. He suffered incomprehensible agonies on the cross so that we could be intimately connected with them. I personally would like to give Jesus Christ what he paid for. I'd like to give him what he paid for. I'm very aware of how many times I fall short, but he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He doesn't care about all the time that I spend thinking about dumb stuff. So I don't want to care either. There's a guy named Brother Lawrence. Anybody read The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence? Oh my gosh. He was a lay brother in an order of barefoot monks in Paris in like the 1600s. And he had such an amazing relationship with God that people would come from far and wide to talk to him. And there was one thing, the thing that struck me the first time I read the book, and that I've used so more times than I can remember in the years following. He says, at one point he says, that if, he was talking to somebody else, so, and they were recording it, so said that if an occasion arose to practice some virtue, he would say, Lord, I'm not going to be able to do this unless you help me. That when he had failed in his duty, he only said, Lord, you know me. I'll do this every time. If you don't help me, it's you who has to prevent me from falling. That then he gave himself no further uneasiness about it. That was the part that got me, because I spent so much of my life beating myself up. It was like he'd blow it, he'd do something wrong, and he'd just go, you know me? You know this is going to happen every time? Bum, ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. It was over. It was over. He's helping me get there. Because all the time that I spend beating myself up, I'm closed to his love. I'm closed. I'm not giving him what he bought on the cross. I'm denying it because I'm in the center of my TV screen. Not his wonderful face. Not. So I'm really, by his mercy and grace, learning to gradually let go of all the white noise and the clutter. But it takes time and practice. It doesn't happen unless I give him time. He can't teach me. He can't get me there. The more time I spend doing it, the deeper we go. And I feel like I've dipped my toes in that lake, gone no further. But I wanna get in over my head if I can. And I know I will. At some point, I'll spend eternity over my head. But I want to get as close as I can now. That verse in Ephesians that talks about God being able to work, to do exceeding abundantly above all that we could ask or think, according to the power that works in us. One translation translates that, the power that works deeply and gently within us. Deeply and gently. And I feel like the more still I can be, the more that power can work deeply and gently within me. I really often now get to the point where there aren't any words. Like, I'm in a place that's beyond words. I don't want to say anything. And I don't hear him saying anything either, most of the time. But the sweetness of just being in his presence. there's nothing that compares. There's just nothing. And then my mind will wander off and I'll start thinking about some stupid thing. But I read something one time about, learning to do this is kind of like if you've ever watched an infant nursing. The infant uses its mouth long enough to get the milk flowing, and then the milk flows. And then when the milk stops flowing, moves its mouth a little bit more till the milk starts flowing again. And I think sometimes that's what I have to do. So sometimes my mind goes somewhere and I need to get the milk flowing again. But isn't that a beautiful mind picture? Yeah. There's a verse somewhere in Isaiah that talks about milking out on God. Gosh, I have taken way too long, haven't I? Oh yeah. Don't you hate it when your thing doesn't recognize your face? On Face ID, jeepers. So, of course, when I was thinking about putting this teaching together, I was thinking about where does the Bible talk about rest? I was thinking about Hebrews 4, about, there's a promise left to us of entering into his rest. And interestingly, that word, rest, is Sabbath rest. It's actually a Sabbath rest. And it is the particular word for Sabbath rest. God actually talks about, in the Old Testament, he talks about, twice, he talks about Israel keeping the Sabbath, and he talks about why he wants them to do it. And there are two different reasons, actually. But the first one is, you're not going to work on the seventh day because I rested on the seventh day. And that word for rest is to stop in order to enjoy. So he stopped so that he could enjoy his works, all that he had made. He stopped to enjoy it, to delight in it, you might say. So there's a promise left to us of a rest that is delighting. It has to do with delight. So there's a lead up to that in chapter 3, where Israel didn't enter into the land of rest because of unbelief. And there's this great quote in a translation called the Mirror Translation. The point is this: even though they survived by supernatural means in the wilderness for 40 years, they failed to grasp what God had in mind for them. Their own unbelief disqualified them. And here's a note. You can experience God's supernatural provision and protection and yet remain outside his rest. The ultimate proof of faith is not experience of the supernatural, but entering into his rest. The ultimate proof of faith is not the experience of the supernatural, but entering into his rest. His rest celebrates his perfect work. He longs for you to discover your own completeness and perfection as seen from his point of view. He longs for you to discover your own completeness and perfection in what he's done for you. That's when you enter into rest. He wants you to see how perfect you are in Christ, and he wants you to know that he delights in your particularity. So, I'm going to wrap up by talking about your stones. Everybody got their stone? And I think this actually kind of ties it together. Did you guys get stoned? Oh, good. Not stoned. Sorry if I have sounded wrong. If you haven't gotten this, anybody who hasn't can pick one up, because those are not going back to Maine with me in my luggage. So, there's a verse in Revelation 2:17. It's in one of the letters to the churches, and it says, "To him that overcomes, I'm going to give to eat of the manna, and I'm going to give him a stone." Now, a lot of translations say a white stone, so I figure all the ones I brought qualify as white stones, even though some of them have a little color in them. But that word that is translated white can also be translated shining. So I kind of like the thought that we're all going to get to him who overcomes, I'm going to give him a shining stone, like that shines from the inside, a white stone. And that stone is going to have a name card, put a name on it that nobody knows except for that person and God. So you're going to have a stone. And I think, yes, let's talk like Revelation. I'm not going to get into this whole thing, but I think every time I overcome, I get a little bit more of a sense of what that name is that's written on my stone. Because in the Bible, your name represents who you are. Nobody knows the name that's written on my stone. Right now, nobody knows entirely except for God. But it's by entering into his rest, by not allowing my wrong concept of myself, not allowing the lies that I believe about who I am, or more probably who I'm not allowing those to get bigger in my mind than the reality of who God's made me to be. It's by my saying yes. It's by my saying yes. I am a child of God. I am perfect. I am his delight. I'm his bride. I'm his bride. I'm perfect. by my saying yes to that and letting it sink into all the way in, all the way down, all the way through, every cell, every neuron. That's what gives him what he paid for. That's what gives him what he paid for. That's what allows him to do exceeding abundantly above everything that I could ever imagine in me and through me. And it allows him to more and more show me and the world the name that's written on that stone, so that I can be and do what he made me to be and do in this world. People often will pray a prayer or say a blessing at the end of when they shared, and I was just saying, God, should I speak a blessing over everybody? And I remembered hearing a woman recently say, I find that I can often impart more if I don't say anything. So I'm going to take a minute and not say anything. And I just invite you to receive. Just receive. Thank you. Thank you, thank you.